Every person on a film set expects something to go wrong at least once in a while. Maybe a camera stops working or a light falls a little out of place. But no one ever expects the human heart to reach its limit in the middle of a perfect take. And on that day, something happened that no one saw coming. The scene was supposed to be simple. Sandra had to walk into a room and deliver a calm line. It looked easy from the outside. But hidden under the surface was a pressure she had been carrying for days. The kind of pressure that grows quietly until it suddenly becomes too much. The moment the director called action, something shifted in the air. Keanu felt it before anyone else. He watched Sandra from across the room as she took a slow breath. Her eyes looked tired even though she kept smiling for the crew. He had worked with her long enough to know that she always pushed herself harder than anyone else did. She never wanted to disappoint people. She never wanted to show weakness. And that was exactly why she kept silent about how exhausted she really was. Sandra took her first step forward. The room was silent except for the faint sound of the camera rolling. She lifted her chin and prepared to speak, but her face suddenly changed. It was small enough that most people missed it, but Keanu did not. Her eyes lost focus for a second. Her fingers twitched. Her breathing became uneven. It was like watching a door slowly close while everyone else thought it was still open. Keanu felt a quiet fear rise in his chest, but he stayed still and watched her carefully. She delivered the first line perfectly. Her voice sounded steady. But as she moved into the next line, her knees trembled slightly. She tried to hold herself upright, but her body betrayed her. The room seemed to tilt around her. The bright studio lights felt heavier than before. She blinked slowly, trying to shake off the dizziness, but it only grew stronger. For a moment, she tried to take another step, hoping no one would notice. But then her legs gave out completely. There was a half-second of silence where everyone tried to understand what they saw. Some thought she had slipped. Others thought it was part of the scene. But Keanu knew the truth immediately. He felt his heart beat faster, but his body remained calm. He did not rush or panic. He simply moved forward with steady steps. His face stayed relaxed because he knew that the last thing Sandra needed was fear around her. Every second mattered, and he used all of them with purpose. Before Sandra's body could hit the ground, Keanu reached her and caught her gently. The entire crew gasped. Equipment clattered. Someone shouted for help. But in the center of all this noise, Keanu created a quiet space around her. He placed one arm behind her back and another under her hand, making sure she felt secure. Her breath was shallow and her eyes looked confused and scared. She tried to speak, but her voice came out weak and shaky. Keanu leaned closer and spoke in a soft voice made only for her. He told her to breathe slowly. He told her he was right there. His calmness wrapped around her like a protective shield. Even though people were running around them, calling for medics and asking questions, Keanu kept his attention only on her. Nothing else mattered in that moment except making her feel safe. Sandra touched his sleeve, embarrassed and frightened. She whispered that she was fine, but Keanu gently shook his head. He could see her hands shaking. He could see the fear she was trying to push down. He knew her too well to believe her when she said everything was okay. She tried to sit up, but her body was too weak. She looked like someone carrying a weight that finally became too heavy. The crew gathered around, unsure what to do. Some people kept asking if she needed water. Others spoke too loudly, adding more tension to an already emotional moment. But Keanu never raised his voice. He never lost his calm. He told them to give her space. His tone was steady and respectful, and people immediately listened. The noise softened. The room slowed down. For a moment, it felt like time paused just for them. As he helped her rest against a nearby seat, Sandra closed her eyes and tried not to cry. She hated feeling weak in front of people. She hated the idea that she had slowed down the entire production. But Keanu placed a hand on her shoulder and told her to take a breath. She looked up at him, and her eyes held so many unspoken fears. She wondered if people would judge her. She wondered if she had ruined the day. She wondered if she looked unprofessional. Keanu saw all those worries written across her face, and he spoke in that same calm voice that always seemed to carry comfort inside it. He told her that nothing else mattered except her health. He told her she was not a burden. He told her she did not need to pretend she was okay. She stared at him quietly as his words slowly settled into her heart. The medics arrived and quickly checked her, but even as they worked, Sandra kept looking at Keanu. His presence made her feel grounded. His expression never changed. It was calm, steady, and full of understanding. In that moment, she realized that he was not just a co-star. He was someone who paid attention, someone who noticed when she was hurting even when she tried to hide it. The crew watched from behind the cameras. They expected drama. They expected frustration. They expected delays to anger people. Instead, they saw something different. They saw kindness in its purest form. They saw a man who used his calmness to steady someone else's storm. And for a moment the entire set felt unified by the simple truth that they had just witnessed something real. Sandra's breathing steadied, but she still felt shaky. The directors whispered about what to do next. Some wanted her to rest for a few minutes and then continue. Others thought they should move to a different scene, but Keanu was still kneeling beside her, and his eyes told everyone that this situation was far more serious than they realized. Sandra finally whispered a small apology. She said she did not want to cause trouble, but Keanu only looked at her with gentle disbelief. He told her she did not need to apologize for being human. He asked her when she last slept properly. She did not answer. Her silence said everything. And right there in front of the whole crew, something changed inside Sandra. She felt seen in a way she had not felt in a long time. She felt understood without having to explain every detail. And she felt something else too: safety. And this was only the beginning. The medics guided Sandra to a quieter corner of the set while the crew tried to reorganize themselves. The noise around them slowly faded as the team moved lights and cameras away. But Keanu stayed right beside her, walking at her slow pace like he had all the time in the world. He did not let go of her arm until she was safely seated. Even then, he stayed close just in case she felt dizzy again. Sandra kept insisting she was feeling better, but Keanu could see the truth in her tired eyes. He knew that people sometimes said they were fine simply because they were scared to admit the opposite. The director walked over with worry written all over his face. He asked Sandra if she could continue shooting soon. Sandra looked away, ashamed of her weakness. She wanted to say yes. She wanted to stand up and prove she was strong. She tried to open her mouth, but her breath caught in her throat. She could not lie, not this time. Keanu stepped forward before she could answer. He spoke with quiet firmness, telling the director that she needed more than 5 minutes of rest. His voice carried calm authority, and it made the director pause. The director tried again, gently reminding them about the schedule, but Keanu did not move from his place. He did not raise his voice or show anger. He simply repeated his words in a steady tone that no one dared to argue with. He said Sandra's health was more important than any scene. He said rushing her would cause more harm. His calm confidence created a silence that everyone respected. Sandra watched him in disbelief. She had never seen anyone speak for her so gently, yet so strongly at the same time. As the director walked away to adjust the schedule, Sandra lowered her head. She felt embarrassed, overwhelmed, and grateful all at once. She whispered that she was sorry for causing trouble. Keanu sat beside her, leaning forward slightly so she could hear him clearly. He told her again that she did not need to apologize, but she shook her head with frustration. She said she felt weak. She said she should have pushed harder. She said she had been trying to keep it together for days. Her voice cracked as she admitted that she had not told anyone about her exhaustion because she did not want to disappoint people. Keanu listened without interrupting her once. His eyes stayed soft and patient. When she finished, he asked her the one question she had been avoiding. He asked her why she thought she had to carry everything alone. Sandra opened her mouth to answer, but the truth was harder than she expected. She had always been the one who smiled even when she was stressed. She always pretended she was fine because she believed people expected it from her. For years, she had been taking care of others while forgetting to take care of herself. As she thought about it, her eyes filled with tears. She tried to blink away. She felt ashamed to let him see her like this. But Keanu gently placed a hand on the back of her palm. The touch was light, respectful, and steady. He told her softly that pretending to be strong all the time was not strength. He said real strength was being honest about how you feel. His words settled in her heart like warm sunlight. She did not argue. This time, she simply listened. A few minutes later, the medics returned to check on her again. They asked if she had eaten properly that morning. She hesitated. Then she admitted she skipped breakfast. When they asked if she slept well, she quietly said no. The medics exchanged looks with concern. They told her she needed rest, not a quick break. They suggested she should step outside for fresh air. Keanu immediately offered to go with her. He knew she would not feel comfortable walking alone while still unsteady. As they stepped outside the studio doors, the warm afternoon light hit their faces. The air felt different, calmer, and more open. Sandra took a deep breath and let herself relax for the first time that day. She looked around quietly, feeling the weight in her chest finally begin to lift. Keanu walked beside her slowly, making sure her steps stayed steady. She kept apologizing for slowing him down, but each time he told her that he was not in a hurry. He meant it. They reached a quiet bench near the parking area. Sandra sat down while Keanu stood for a moment, studying her expression. Then he sat beside her without saying a word. The silence between them felt gentle instead of heavy. She leaned back and closed her eyes, letting the sunlight warm her face. She whispered that she did not know how everything inside her had become so overwhelming. Keanu listened, and then told her something she had never heard from anyone before. He said that even the strongest hearts break when they carry too much alone. His voice had no pity, only understanding. For a moment, Sandra almost cried. She covered her face with her hands, trying to hold her emotions in. Keanu respected her silence and waited. He knew that sometimes people needed time before they could speak again. After a long breath, Sandra told him she had been ignoring the signs. She said she had been losing sleep, skipping meals, and worrying endlessly about being perfect. She admitted she was afraid people would see her struggle and think less of her. Keanu shook his head gently. He told her that no one on earth had the right to expect perfection from her. He said she was allowed to rest. She was allowed to take care of herself. She was allowed to be human. Sandra felt a deep ache in her chest as she listened. It was the ache of finally releasing something she had held too tightly for too long. They sat together for a long while, letting the quiet help Sandra recover. For the first time that week, she felt safe enough to breathe slowly. The tension in her shoulders softened. Her heartbeat steadied. She looked at Keanu with quiet gratitude. She told him she was thankful that he caught her. Thankful that he noticed before anyone else did. Thankful that he stayed. Keanu responded with the same calm tone he always used when he meant something deeply. He told her she would have done the same for him. The honesty in his voice made her chest feel warm. Even though the moment had been frightening, something meaningful had grown from it. She realized she was not alone. She realized someone truly cared. But what neither of them knew was that this moment was only the beginning of something far bigger. The pressure from the studio was growing. There were people who disagreed with Keanu stopping the shoot. There were decisions being made behind the scenes that neither of them expected. And soon, they would both face choices that would test everything they believed in. The studio doors closed behind them as Sandra and Keanu sat quietly on the bench outside. The air felt calmer, but Sandra could still feel the pressure of everything she had been hiding. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees, trying to collect herself. Her mind replayed the moment she collapsed, and embarrassment washed over her again. She whispered softly that she wished no one had seen her fall. Keanu looked at her with gentle eyes and told her that everyone falls at some point. He said falling was never the problem. Pretending you never fall was. His words made her blink slowly, letting them settle deep inside her heart. She took another long breath and tried to smile, but it faded quickly. She admitted that she had been pushing herself too much. She said she felt responsible for everything around her. She wanted people to think she was strong enough to handle anything. Keanu listened patiently. He never cut her off or tried to fix everything with fast answers. He let her speak until she said everything she had been holding inside. It felt strange for her. She was used to carrying her struggles alone. But now, sitting beside someone who genuinely cared, she felt her walls slowly breaking. Inside the studio, the crew had paused their work. People whispered among themselves. Some were worried. Some were confused. Others talked about the schedule and how the delay might affect the production. The director walked around with a concerned expression, knowing he had to give the cast time but also feeling pressure from the producers to keep filming. He kept glancing at the door, unsure how to approach the situation. The energy in the room felt unsettled, and nobody knew what would happen next. After a few minutes, the director stepped outside to check on them. He approached slowly, trying not to intrude on their moment. Keanu saw him coming and stood up with quiet respect. Sandra sat straight, even though she still felt weak. The director asked if she felt better. She nodded softly, though her body felt far from normal. He asked if she thought she could continue filming soon. Sandra glanced at Keanu, then looked away quickly. Guilt spread across her face again. She wanted to say yes to please everyone, but she knew she was not ready. Keanu stepped closer and answered before she could force herself to agree. He said calmly that she needed more time. He said she should not be rushed. The director sighed, torn between compassion and responsibilities. He explained that the producers wanted to complete the remaining scenes today because an important set would be dismantled the next morning. Sandra looked down at her hands. Her heart tightened again. She knew how expensive delays were. She knew people depended on her. But she also knew she could not pretend nothing had happened. Keanu noticed her silence. He turned to the director and asked for a moment. The director nodded and walked back toward the building. Keanu sat down beside Sandra again. He asked her gently what she truly wanted, not what she felt she owed others, not what people expected from her, just what she needed at that moment. Sandra stared at the ground, struggling to find her voice. Finally, she whispered that she needed rest, real rest, not the kind that lasts 10 minutes. Not the kind that hides under makeup and forced smiles. She needed time to breathe, time to recover, and time to be human again. Keanu nodded with full understanding. He told her that she had every right to choose her well-being. He told her that no scene was worth sacrificing her health. Sandra's eyes filled again, but this time it was not from fear. It was from relief. She felt seen without being judged. She felt understood without having to explain her entire heart. Keanu stood up and told her to wait. He walked back toward the studio with quiet certainty. Inside, the crew looked up the moment Keanu entered. He asked to speak with the director and the producers. People stepped aside as he walked through. Something about his calm presence changed the energy of the room. It was like he carried a soft authority that made everyone listen. The director and producers gathered around a table. Keanu spoke with steady clarity. He told them Sandra needed real rest. He said forcing her to film would harm her health and lower the quality of the work. He told them the human being mattered more than the schedule. One of the producers argued softly, reminding him of the cost of delays. Another pointed out that the entire set was prepared and ready. Keanu listened without getting upset. He stayed steady and respectful. Then he said something that silenced the entire room. He told them that if they insisted on shooting today, they could shoot without him. He said he would not act in a scene if Sandra was being pressured into working while she was unwell. His voice was calm, not angry. But it carried a weight that no one expected. The room fell silent. The producers exchanged tense glances. They knew Keanu was not someone who made empty statements. He stood by his principles. He stood by people. The director sighed and rubbed his forehead. He knew Keanu was right. He finally agreed to move the scene to another day. The producers hesitated but eventually accepted the decision. They rearranged the schedule quietly, understanding that this was more than a simple delay. It was an act of respect and compassion. Keanu thanked them with a polite nod and walked back outside. Sandra looked up when she saw him. She asked what happened. He smiled gently and said she had the rest of the day off. Her eyes widened with disbelief. She asked if everyone was upset. Keanu shook his head. He said the work would continue another day. He did not mention how he stood up for her. He did not mention the pressure he pushed against. He did not mention the choice he gave the producers. He kept all of that to himself. His kindness did not need an audience. Sandra felt her heart soften in a way she could not explain. She thanked him quietly. Her voice trembled with emotion. Keanu sat beside her again and told her she had nothing to thank him for. He said he only did what anyone with a heart should do. But she knew not everyone would have done what he did. Not everyone would risk being misunderstood. Not everyone would take a stand with so much calm confidence. As they sat there, a breeze moved softly around them. The sky looked bright and patient, almost as if it understood the moment. Sandra leaned back and let the air fill her lungs. She felt lighter than before. Her body still felt weak, but her spirit felt stronger. She realized she had been running on empty for far too long. She realized she had forgotten how to treat herself with kindness. And now, with Keanu sitting beside her, she began to see things differently. For a moment, they said nothing. Silence rested comfortably between them. Then Sandra asked him a question. She asked why he stepped in so quickly, why he noticed her struggle before anyone else did. Keanu looked at her with soft, steady eyes. He said he noticed because he cared. He said he cared because she mattered. His voice was gentle but sincere. It carried truth, not decoration. Sandra felt her breath catch in her throat. No one had said something like that to her in a long time, maybe ever. It was a moment she did not expect, a moment that made her heart tremble with gratitude. But neither of them knew that this moment of peace was only temporary. Something was happening inside the studio. A phone call had arrived. Someone important was asking questions about the delay. Someone who did not understand the full truth. And soon, new tension would rise. Tension that would test Sandra, test Keanu, and test everything they believed about kindness and respect. The real challenge had not even started yet. Inside the studio, phones kept ringing as the crew slowly reorganized the equipment. Most people thought the situation had calmed down, but they did not know about the new tension quietly moving its way toward the set. A senior studio manager had found out about the sudden delay, and he wanted an explanation. He did not know Sandra had collapsed. He only knew the shoot had stopped, and the cost of that pause worried him more than anything else. Back outside, Sandra breathed slowly, feeling the fresh air on her skin. She still felt weak, but her heart was finally steady. Keanu stayed near her, watching silently to make sure she remained stable. She kept thanking him every few minutes, and each time he told her she did not need to, but she could not stop. Gratitude flooded through her. She was not used to someone protecting her without any hesitation. She was not used to someone seeing her pain without judging her. It felt rare. It felt almost unreal. After some time, the door pushed open and the director stepped out again, this time with worry in his eyes. He walked toward them and sat on the edge of the bench, trying to keep his voice calm. He said they had a small problem. The senior studio manager wanted to talk. Sandra looked confused and nervous. She asked if she had caused trouble again. Keanu shook his head gently, but he could see the concern growing in her expression. She had spent so many years carrying the fear of disappointing others that even the mention of a manager made her heartbeat pick up. The director explained that the manager was upset about the scheduled delay and needed to speak with both of them. Sandra lowered her eyes, her breath trembling. She felt responsible again. She whispered that she should have pushed herself harder. Keanu immediately stepped forward, telling her softly not to say that. He reminded her that her health was more important than any deadline. She tried to believe him, but guilt still lingered. The director suggested they come inside when Sandra felt ready. Then he returned to the building, leaving them alone again. Sandra closed her eyes and leaned back. She whispered that she did not want people thinking she was causing problems. Keanu sat beside her and spoke in a quiet, warm tone. He said that real problems come from people who ignore others, not from someone who simply needs a moment to breathe. His words calmed her, but tension still lingered beneath her ribs. She took one last breath before standing up slowly. Keanu stayed beside her in case she lost balance again. They walked back toward the studio, the hallway quiet and dim. The closer they got, the more Sandra felt her chest tight. She hated conflict. She hated being at the center of attention. She hated the idea that someone believed she had ruined the day. Keanu noticed the way her fingers curled slightly with anxiety. He reached out and gently placed his hand near hers, not touching but close enough to let her know she was not alone. When they reached the main set area, the senior studio manager stood near a table with crossed arms. He looked serious, impatient, and unaware of the emotional weight already sitting on Sandra's shoulders. He asked why the shoot had stopped. The director tried to explain, but the manager lifted his hand, wanting answers directly from the actors. Sandra stepped forward slowly. She opened her mouth to speak, but only a small breath came out. The guilt, the exhaustion, the pressure all mixed in her chest. Keanu noticed her trembling and stepped in gently. He explained everything calmly, respectfully, and without blaming anyone. He told the manager that Sandra needed rest because she nearly fainted during the scene. The manager raised his eyebrows with surprise. He looked at Sandra again, and this time his expression softened slightly. But he still worried about the schedule. He said they had prepared an expensive set. He asked if they could continue with a lighter scene. Before Sandra could apologize or force herself to agree, Keanu spoke firmly but without anger. He said she needed real recovery time. He said asking her to push through would risk her health. The manager looked between them. He said delays were difficult. He said the team would have to work late another day. He sighed heavily, as if carrying the weight of the entire production budget on his shoulders. Sandra felt the pressure rise again. She whispered that she never wanted to cause trouble. She looked down, ashamed, feeling like a burden. Keanu placed a hand gently on her shoulder. He spoke with his usual calm strength. He told her that she was not causing trouble. He said that everyone has moments when their body decides it cannot hold anymore. He said she had nothing to apologize for. The manager watched this interaction, seeing something he had not expected. He saw genuine care. He saw humanity instead of complaints, and slowly his own frustration softened. Finally, the manager exhaled deeply. He agreed to postpone the shoot for the day. He warned them about future delays, but his tone had changed. He no longer sounded angry. He sounded concerned. He asked Sandra if she was all right. She nodded gently. He told her to rest and regain her strength. It was a small moment, but it made Sandra feel less guilty. Maybe people did understand. Maybe she had judged herself too harshly. The crew began packing up equipment. People whispered, but many of them smiled at Sandra when they walked past. They did not look annoyed. They did not look disappointed. They looked worried for her. Some offered warm words. Some told her to take care, and she realized something important. The fear that people would judge her had lived louder in her mind than in reality. Keanu guided her back outside for fresh air again. The sun had moved slightly, casting soft shadows around them. Sandra sat down carefully and breathed deeply. This time her breath felt cleaner, lighter. She whispered that she had been wrong for so long. She said she had believed everyone wanted her to be perfect. But no one had asked for perfection. They just wanted her healthy and safe. Keanu sat next to her, watching her quietly. He said that the pressure she carried was the pressure she placed on herself. He said other people could be kinder than the fears in her head allowed her to believe. She looked at him with tired eyes. She told him she did not know how to let go of that pressure. She had been carrying it for years. Keanu answered gently. He said letting go does not happen in one day. He said it starts with one moment when you choose yourself over expectations. Sandra felt tears sting the back of her eyes. She turned her head slightly so he would not see them fall. But Keanu noticed anyway. He did not mention the tears. He did not ask her to stop crying. He just stayed with her in silence, letting her feel what she needed to feel. After some time, she whispered that she wished she had his calmness. She wished she had his steadiness. Keanu smiled very softly. He told her that he was not calm all the time. He said he only learned how to breathe through difficult moments after life taught him many painful lessons. He told her she would learn too, maybe in her own way, maybe slowly, but she would learn. Sandra leaned back, letting her shoulder touch the back of the bench. She stared at the sky, feeling the warmth of the day and the warmth of his presence beside her. She whispered that she was scared earlier, not because she fell, but because she thought no one would care. Keanu turned slightly toward her. He told her that she mattered more than she realized, not because she was an actress, not because of her talent, but because she was a human being with a good heart. His words reached a part of her she had kept hidden for years. She closed her eyes and let a quiet tear fall. It felt like a release, like something inside her was finally softening after being hard for so long. But just as things felt peaceful, Sandra's phone buzzed. She looked down at it slowly. Her expression changed. Keanu noticed immediately. She whispered that it was someone she had not heard from in a long time, someone who always brought stress into her life, someone who expected too much from her. Her hands trembled slightly, and suddenly a new layer of tension entered the day. This new message would change everything about what happened next. Sandra stared at her phone, her fingers trembling as the screen lit up. She did not open the message right away. She only held the phone tightly as if it were some heavy object she did not want to touch. Keanu watched her quietly, noticing the fear in her eyes return like a shadow she thought she had escaped. He did not ask what the message said. He simply asked if she was all right. Sandra shook her head slowly. She whispered that the message was from someone she had been trying to avoid for months. Keanu leaned a little closer, not to pressure her, but to show she was not alone. He asked if that person had caused her stress before. She nodded softly. She said this person was someone who always demanded more from her. They pushed her past her limits, made her feel guilty for resting, and treated her kindness as something they could use. She said she had been trying to distance herself, but fear had made it difficult. Even a single text from that person could ruin her peace for days. She finally opened the message. Her eyes scanned the words and her heart sank. It was a long message filled with pressure disguised as concern. The person asked why she was not answering their calls. They demanded updates. They questioned her dedication to a project she had not even agreed to fully. They wrote lines that made her feel guilty, as if she owed them something. Sandra's breath trembled again. She whispered that this was exactly the kind of pressure she had been carrying before she collapsed. Keanu watched her carefully, his own expression calm but serious. He asked her slowly if she felt obligated to respond. Sandra nodded weakly. She said she felt responsible. She said she did not want to disappoint them. She said she did not want to be seen as unreliable. Keanu took a slow breath. He told her that responsibility does not mean breaking yourself for people who do not care about your well-being. He said reliability does not mean sacrificing your health. He said she deserved to protect her peace. Sandra blinked at his words. Part of her wanted to believe him, but another part of her was still trapped in old fears. She said she did not want people to think she was difficult. She said she had always trained herself to be agreeable, to be polite, to be easy to work with. Keanu shook his head gently. He said there is a difference between being kind and being controlled. He said kindness should never demand the destruction of your own peace. His voice was soft, but it carried a truth she could not ignore. She finally put her phone down, her fingers loosening as if letting go of a weight she had held for too long. Keanu asked her what she truly wanted at that moment, not what she feared, not what she thought others expected, but what she needed. Sandra whispered that she wanted a moment without pressure, a moment without guilt, a moment to breathe without feeling like she was behind. Keanu nodded and told her that this moment was hers and she had every right to take it. They sat in silence for a few minutes. The sun dipped lower, casting a warm golden hue across the quiet area outside the studio. Sandra leaned back, feeling the breeze touch her skin. She whispered that she wished she had learned earlier how to say no, how to set boundaries, how to tell people that she needed rest. Keanu told her that learning boundaries is a slow process, and it usually begins only after someone collapses under the weight of expectations. She looked at him with sadness in her eyes. She said she wished she had not collapsed in front of everyone. She said she felt embarrassed and exposed. Keanu shook his head once again. He told her that falling is not embarrassing. He said everyone at the studio saw something human, not something shameful. He said they saw someone who worked hard for years and finally needed a break. He said no one judged her. She swallowed deeply, feeling a warmth rise in her chest. As the silence settled again, the director came outside and approached them carefully. He said they had wrapped everything for the day and that Sandra could go home whenever she felt ready. He told her to take care of herself and not worry about the shoot. His kindness surprised her. She expected frustration, but she saw understanding instead. She thanked him softly, and he returned inside to finish paperwork. Keanu looked at her gently. He asked if she wanted to go home or if she needed a little more time outside. Sandra said she wanted to stay for a few more minutes. She felt safe here. She felt steady. Keanu nodded and stayed with her. He did not check his phone. He did not look bored. He simply stayed present, letting her take whatever time she needed. After a few moments, Sandra spoke again. She said she had something she needed to confess. She said she had been afraid to tell anyone about how exhausted she really was. She said she felt pressure from every angle, and she did not want to appear weak. Keanu listened with full attention. She said she feared people would think less of her if they saw her struggling. She said she felt like she had to be strong all the time because people expected it from her. Keanu waited until she finished. Then he said something in a gentle, honest tone. He said strength is not shown when everything is easy. He said real strength appears when someone admits they are tired but chooses to heal instead of hide. He said he admired her for speaking openly because it takes courage to reveal the heart. Sandra felt her throat tighten with emotion. She whispered that no one had ever told her that before. She looked at him for a long moment. There was something in his eyes that she could not fully describe. It was calm, but it was also deeply caring. She felt her heart soften. She realized she was not as alone as she thought. She realized she had someone beside her who understood silence like she did, someone who respected her without needing explanations, someone who could take her fear and turn it into something gentler. After some time, Sandra sighed softly and said she would reply to the stressful message later when she felt stronger. Keanu nodded with approval. He said she did not have to answer anything until she regained her peace. She smiled weakly, feeling relief settle inside her. As the sun lowered, casting long shadows across the ground, they began walking toward the parking area. Sandra took slow steps, but Keanu stayed beside her, matching her pace. Every few moments, he glanced at her to make sure she was steady. She whispered that she did not know how to thank him for everything he had done. Keanu smiled softly and said she did not need to thank him. He said he was there because he cared, not because he wanted praise. But as they reached her car, something unexpected happened. Sandra's phone buzzed again. She froze. This time, the message preview showed something that made her pulse quicken. It was short, it was urgent, and it was from someone she trusted completely. Someone who would never send a message like this unless something was seriously wrong. She opened it quickly. Her eyes widened, her hand trembled. Keanu saw her expression change instantly. She looked at him with fear growing in her eyes. She whispered 3 words. Something is wrong. The evening was no longer peaceful. Something new had begun. Sandra stood beside her car, frozen in place as she stared at the message on her screen. Her breath became shallow again, not from exhaustion this time, but from fear. Keanu stepped closer without crowding her. He asked gently what the message said. Sandra swallowed hard. She whispered that the message was from a close friend who almost never reached out in panic. The words were short but filled with urgency. Sandra read them again slowly, as if hoping they would change. She whispered that her friend was going through something serious, something emotional, something that needed support right away. Sandra's voice trembled with worry as she explained that her friend rarely asked for help. She said her friend was the kind of person who held everything inside, much like she did. And if that person reached out with such urgency, it meant the situation was truly heavy. Keanu listened carefully, his face calm even as concern filled his eyes. He asked Sandra what she wanted to do. She looked at him helplessly. She said she wanted to go to her friend immediately, but she felt too weak to drive safely. She tried to steady her breath, but her hands shook again. The emotional weight of the day had already drained her. Now another storm was waiting for her outside the studio walls. Keanu placed one hand lightly on her shoulder. He said he would not let her face this alone. He said he could drive her if she trusted him. Sandra looked up at him, her eyes filled with gratitude and fear at the same time. She whispered yes. She trusted him, more than she expected, more than she could explain. Keanu guided her gently toward his car, making sure she did not lose her balance. As she sat inside, she closed her eyes for a moment, letting her heart settle. Keanu drove carefully through the fading evening light, keeping the car steady. Sandra held her phone tightly, waiting for updates from her friend. The silence inside the car was heavy but supportive. Keanu spoke only when needed, asking soft questions to keep her calm. After a short drive, they reached her friend's home. Sandra's heartbeat raced as she stepped out slowly. Keanu stayed beside her, offering quiet strength. When they reached the door, Sandra knocked softly. Moments later, the door opened. Her friend stood there with red eyes, shaken and overwhelmed. Sandra immediately stepped forward and embraced her, holding her with gentle care. Her friend trembled in her arms, finally letting out the emotions she had been hiding. Keanu watched the two of them with quiet respect. He did not try to interrupt or ask questions. He waited patiently, understanding that some moments did not need words. When Sandra and her friend finally stepped inside, he followed slowly, giving them space. Sandra helped her friend sit down on the couch. Keanu remained near the entrance, letting Sandra lead the conversation. Her friend explained everything between soft tears. Stress, loneliness, pressure, and emotional exhaustion had built up for weeks. She said she felt like she had no one to talk to. She said she reached out because she knew Sandra would understand. Sandra listened with deep empathy, holding her friend's hand the same way Keanu held hers earlier that day. As Sandra comforted her friend, she realized something important. The fear she had carried all these years was built on the belief that showing weakness made her a burden. But now, watching someone she cared about open up and trust her, she saw the truth. Vulnerability was not a weakness. It was a bridge, a connection, a reminder that hearts heal together, not alone. Keanu stepped closer, offering water and gentle reassurance. His calm presence filled the room like quiet sunlight. He did not try to fix everything. He only offered support, the same way he supported Sandra hours earlier. Sandra noticed this and felt a warm gratitude grow inside her. He was not just an actor she worked with. He was someone who understood humanity in a way many people forgot. After a while, Sandra's friend began to calm down. Her breathing steadied. Her shoulders relaxed. She thanked both of them with a soft, emotional voice. She said she felt safe. She said she felt seen. Sandra squeezed her hand gently and told her she was never alone, even when she felt like she was. Keanu added that everyone goes through heavy moments, and reaching out for help is an act of courage. When Sandra's friend finally felt stable enough to rest, Sandra and Keanu stepped outside to give her space. The night air was cool and quiet. Streetlights glowed softly. Sandra stood quietly, letting the calmness of the night wash over her. She looked at Keanu with gentle eyes. She whispered that she would not have made it through the day without him. She said his calmness had saved her, not only from collapsing physically, but from collapsing emotionally. Keanu listened, then spoke softly. He said she did not owe him anything. He said kindness was not a favor, but a way of being human. He said he simply did what he hoped someone would do for him if he were in her place. Sandra looked down and smiled weakly. She said he always made everything sound simple. He smiled back, saying that life becomes lighter when people treat each other with care. They walked slowly toward his car again. Sandra moved with more strength than before, even though the day had been heavy. She felt something inside her heart settle into a better place. She understood now that she did not have to carry everything by herself. She understood that asking for help was not a sign of weakness. She understood that kindness was not something small. It was something powerful enough to save someone in the quietest way. On the drive back, the car felt peaceful. Sandra leaned against the window, watching the night blur gently past her eyes. She whispered that she wanted to make changes in her life. She wanted to rest more. She wanted to set boundaries. She wanted to take care of her heart the way she took care of others. Keanu nodded and told her that healing begins in simple steps, one breath at a time, one choice at a time. When they reached her home, Keanu walked her to the door. She turned to him, her eyes full of gratitude that words could barely describe. She whispered thank you, but not in the simple sense. She said thank you for seeing her. Thank you for staying. Thank you for being calm when she could not be. Thank you for reminding her she mattered. Keanu looked at her with soft eyes. He told her she had always mattered. He said she did not need to be perfect. She only needed to be real. Sandra felt tears rise again, but this time they were gentle. She nodded slowly, letting the feeling settle deep inside her heart. Before leaving, Keanu told her to rest and take care of herself. She promised she would. She watched him walk back to his car, his figure steady under the soft streetlight. The world felt quieter now, kinder, warmer. When she stepped inside her home, she closed the door quietly behind her. For the first time in weeks, she felt like she could breathe without pressure. She felt safe. She felt understood. She felt supported. And she realized something powerful. Sometimes you fall not because you are weak, but because life needs to show you who will hold you with pure calm when you do. And on that day, Keanu did exactly that.